Running cadence, the number of steps you take per minute combined with stride length determines how fast you run, and therefore it's often thought that the higher the cadence, the better.
Yeah, it's true to a certain extent, but it's not that simple. So today, Mark and I are actually going to look in more detail at how a low cadence compared to a high cadence can actually affect the efficiency of your running gait.
The number 180 is commonly thought of as the ideal, that cadence that the long distance pros run at. Yes, that is the average though. There are, however, outliers on either side of this spectrum. Height and therefore leg length can have a significant impact on this as it affects stride length.
As you might expect, I have a higher cadence than Mark and a shorter stride length, which makes sense if you look at our height difference. And that's right, Mark, what's your average cadence for, say, a hard half marathon and compared to your easy run?
Yeah, probably when I'm racing, we're looking at around the 170s, maybe low 170s. But when I'm training, typically I'm actually around the low 160s. How about yourself?
Okay, I actually looked up from my fastest half marathon, that was 182 average. But then for my easy run, I'm normally around a 170. And yeah, I'd say
textbook.
Sadly, the stride length obviously doesn't reflect the textbook, but it just goes to show that we know that increasing your cadence and increasing your stride length is going to make you run faster. But it sounds simple, it isn't quite that simple, because you can't just extend your stride. I mean, maybe if you're a sprinter, but as endurance runners, that's not sustainable. So we've got to somehow find that happy medium that's going to give us the most efficient gait.
Yeah, well, following that pattern, if you were to run at the same speed but reduce your cadence, you therefore have to increase your stride length, so how far you go on each step and each stride. Now, that quite often results in people heel striking, which is less economic because in effect you're almost braking on each stride, and that can lead to, well, essentially longer ground contact time, increased vertical oscillation, which are both things you want to avoid if you're trying to run faster.
I think we're making quite a good case here for a higher cadence, but how high do you actually want to go? And is an exceptionally high cadence actually going to help? Well, it's time for Mark and I to find out. And for this, we're going to do a 1K test at our 5K pace. So first of all, we're just going to run it, not looking at our watch, not worrying about cadence, just what feels natural. Then we're going to go above our natural cadence and below. So for me, I'm going to aim to hit 190 for my high one, and then 160 for my below.
Well, I don't think I can quite hit 190, even if I really tried. So I'm going to go 180 and 150, which seems like a nice balance. And of course, we're going to be measuring a whole bunch of data: heart rate, perceived effort, ground contact time, vertical oscillation, basically everything that helps gauge our running efficiency. 5K pace, who chose this? Right, ready? Let's go.
All right, 1K at my normal cadence, 5K pace, here I go. Oh, forgotten how fast 5K pace is. Oh, it's just 1K. Okay, this is the second round. This is the low cadence, which for me is going to be the hardest. I've got to try and hit 160 while still at 5K pace. I've got the metronome to remind me of the stride rate of my cadence. So I think I'm ready. Off we go. Oh, this feels really weird, but slightly downhill, so it's okay. I think when I go back up the hill, I'm going to find it really hard to keep the pace and keep this low cadence.
Okay, now for the low cadence, got my metronome ready on my phone, 150 steps per minute. Okay, let's go. This feels so odd, like out of control, like I'm really extending to get the stride. Okay, final one, 180 steps per minute. See how we get on. Let's go.
Okay, 190 strides per minute. I'm actually quite looking forward to this one. We ready? The final test, 1K. Here we go. Well, Mark, I don't know about you, but
that was quite psychologically and physically hard. And for me, I knew the low cadence would be hard, and I was just trying so hard to get there. I couldn't quite get down to 160. I was closer on the high end, but how were you?
Yeah, to be honest, I struggled a lot more than I expected. So I'll run through my cadences very quickly. So on my normal, I was around 168. My low, only 161. I thought I might get lower than that.
Yeah, the way you were talking of like, oh, I'll do one.
And then the high, actually, I went 183, so higher than I expected.
That's how you had, yeah.
Yeah, but then obviously we were going at sort of a 5K pace,
Yeah.
so I guess you've got to take that into account. Now I actually amazed myself. I paced them all pretty evenly. I went 310 per kilometre, so that's just shy of 19 kilometres an hour. I actually did a normal cadence, low cadence, high cadence, and just for fun, because I wanted to see whether it was affected by kind of fatigue or anything, I did another normal at the end. And actually the results and the numbers were exactly the same. So that was really good to see. And what did you find anything interesting here?
Well, cadence-wise, like I managed to get, my normal was 178, which is kind of, quite normal for me. Low, I managed to get down to 164, and that was trying so hard. But then the high, I only got to 188. I thought I'd be able to hit 190, but that, it felt fast, but I kind of felt like, I could kind of do that. Like, I quite like a high cadence, and I've definitely, over the years, weirdly got a higher cadence from it. So it didn't feel like so uncomfortable. And pace-wise, I held around, I wasn't quite as accurate as you, but pretty much 4 minutes per K. So, and I didn't do my extra test at the end. But the numbers, when I started to analyse afterwards, they weren't as different as I would have expected. So, for example, my heart rate was slightly higher on the low cadence, but normal and high was kind of similar. I mean, slightly higher on the low cadence, which you kind of think running slow.
Exactly the same.
It would, your heart rate was higher.
Yeah, higher.
It's weird, isn't it? 'Cause you
only
just sort of,
fractionally, but yeah.
so it shows that maybe we're working harder, but because it's so unnatural. Then the one that did kind of correlate, which I would have expected, which is probably the most standout stat for me, was my vertical oscillation. So the low cadence, I was spending more time going up and down by quite a bit, and the high cadence was the smallest, which kind of makes sense. I don't know. Did yours all correlate to what you expected?
Mine mirrored that exactly. Now, and then also obviously the same with the ground contact time. The fastest or the shortest was on the high contact, the high cadence. The bit that I found very interesting, or more from a perceived angle, was that on the low cadence, I felt okay and in control, but it felt very odd. Like, I'm not sure I'd want to do that too often. Whereas on the high cadence, it felt so hard. Like, honestly, for me, that was really fatiguing. My quads were burning by the end of it. But I felt like if I did some training, I could probably get used to that. And it was actually something I could see myself doing. Whereas the low cadence, not. I just couldn't imagine myself running a half marathon.
I felt like I was bounding. Like, I needed some really bouncy shoes to be able to do it.
It felt incredibly inefficient, jarring, and it just like my body couldn't really do it. So it has actually shown, and the interesting numbers here were the E-core, which is your energy cost of running, which is basically a calculation taking into account your watts per kilo and your speed in meters per second, and basically gives you kilojoules per kilogram per kilometre. Anyway, very geeky stuff, but that followed suit again with what we were talking about. So I had 1.00 for the normal, 1.09 for the low, so that's inefficient because it's a higher number.
I was 1.09 for my low as well.
Oh, there we go. And then the 0.98 for my high cadence, which is meaning it's more efficient because I'm putting out less power but traveling at good speeds.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, mine there was not quite as clear as yours, but my lowest or my most efficient was my high cadence, which I think shows that it's maybe less difference between what my normal cadence is and my high cadence is. But there was some interesting research that I read when I was putting this together, and there's been an experiment done with athletes who were sort of what they called untrained compared to trained athletes, and they got them running at these different cadences. And there was a much bigger difference in the E-core, a much more bigger improvement in running efficiency when the untrained runners upped their cadence than compared to everybody had a much more efficient gait when they upped their cadence, whereas the trained runners, it was on average still, but definitely not as much. So I think the kind of moral of that story is almost the lower your cadence or the less running you do, the more scope you've got to improve by upping your cadence.
That is really interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at my numbers again as you're saying that, so my normal cadence 168, my high cadence 183, my E-core was 0.02 lower on the high cadence, so more efficient, my heart rate was only 1 beat higher on the high cadence.
Yeah.
So it has made me wonder, like, is my normal cadence okay, or could I actually start moving towards this high cadence and just getting a tiny bit more efficient? I mean, we're talking marginal gains here, but
over a longer distance.
Yeah,
you know,
I think I am going to
more.
try and do some high cadence work.
But I think all of it, you know, comes back to as well that the cadence isn't the only sort of, you're changing your cadence, but your run gait as a whole is one big package, and as soon as you change something, some other things change. So to improve your efficiency, you might be changing something else which naturally improves your cadence, and it's just a matter of going around, you know, going home and playing with it. And you know, if you guys have any of these metrics on your watch that maybe you've not even looked at before, the majority of watches will have cadence, and a lot will have, you know, your oscillation, the time you're going up and down, and the time your foot's on the ground, and it just starts getting really interesting when you look into it. So I would suggest just going and having a little bit of a play yourselves, and let us know if you can see any differences.
Yeah, well, we hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If so, please do give it a like. Don't forget to give us a follow over on social media. If you'd like to check out more videos like this, then make sure you're subscribed just down below.